Today we have a full slate, like I said. We have the Model UN team here to give you a little presentation, and Marcella is going to be leading the group, so take it away.
Hi, as she said, I'm Marcella. I'm the president this year of our schools, of Monona Grove's Model United Nations team. So we're going to give kind of an overview of what our club does, the kind of competitions that we participate in, and the kind of help that we need in going to these competitions and continuing our club in the future. So, there we go. So this is our officer team. As you can see, we do have a pretty extensive officer team. We have a lot of members in our club. We have roughly 80 to 100 members this year, which is a record for our team. And these officers, we meet once a week before our weekly meetings to plan the meetings, and we all make sure that members have their work done. We lead presentations, we help build skills, and yeah, we basically work as a team to make sure that everyone has what they need done for conferences, and it's a really great group.
Okay, so you might be wondering, I don't even know if I'm doing Yes, maybe? Okay, okay, great, awesome. So, in case you're wondering what Model UN is, in Model UN we basically simulate the United Nations, which is, I hope you all know what the United Nations is. But so we work in committees with other delegates, and these delegates come from all around the world. We've had delegates come to conferences that have been from like the Cayman Islands, and I still talk with some of them. And then they also come from all the way around the United States. So each student represents a different country or a person. So depending on the committee you're in, you might be in the Security Council, and then you'll be one of those countries. And basically your role is to debate the politics that that country believes. And so in doing this, students become familiar with a lot of things like current events, but also geography, which as Americans we could use a little bit of help on. And then also international policies for other countries. It helps for you to understand how the rest of the world works, especially when there's so many things going on. It also helps with public speaking, and it helps you write research and policy papers. We have a ton of alumni that are all around the world, and they're working in law offices, and they're majoring in political science. And we have some people that they're in Italy right now, and they're working to be doctors because they learned about current events that were happening in Model UN, and they said, I really want to help with that. So all of us have really benefited from Model UN, and we really appreciate all the skills that it's given us.
So, in general, right, we host, every year there's the MAGMA, right, Madison Area Local Conference. So, last year we hosted at Monona Grove, and it was the largest conference we've ever had of MAGMA, right? And so, the chairing side, right, every once in a while, this year I'm chairing, Marcella, you're chairing. I think we're sending anywhere from like more than six. I think we're sending 10, 12 experienced delegates to help run these conferences. So not only do we get the experience of in committee, learning, debating, all that, but also organizing, researching ahead of time, and setting up these experiences for others. Conference hosting is a unique experience. I've enjoyed it. I've done it twice. It's a really unique experience, and it really helps you connect with people, understand how to research, and really apply the skills you learned in community work.
Okay, Ukraine Exchange. So MG Model UN has always had a lot of our exchange students join, and in 2021 we had one of ours, Kat, join in, and we realized obviously with the Russia-Ukraine war that we wanted to help. So we helped raise over $20,000 for Ukraine. I was one of those donators. And yeah, we helped support the war. So obviously we do stuff that isn't just helping kids learn, but we do stuff that helps the world around us.
So you might be wondering, all of these kids are up here and they're talking about Model UN, but where do they actually go? Well, where we go, we go to multiple places. The first place that we go, we're actually going this Saturday, is St. Ignatius. We go to their conference, Simon. It's an intermediate conference. It's a ton of fun, and it gives our delegates a bunch of experience, and it's a one-day conference. Our delegates have to pay $30 for that, so that's a little bit on the lower end. And then 2 weeks from now, we're actually going to what Mason talked about, the Madison Model UN, and that's also a local one-day conference. It's also an intermediate conference, and it's a lot of fun that helps our delegates prepare for their next conference, which is the Chicago International Model United Nations Conference. It's a major conference that spans There's delegates from all over the U.S. and internationally, and it spans 4 days. But that is, since it's a 4-day conference and you have to stay in a hotel, that is $500. And then finally this year, we're restarting our special trip that we do every 2 to 4 years. And we're going to Washington, D.C. to the American University Conference. And that's going to be a 3-day conference that is going to be a very advanced conference for a select amount of delegates who are, of course, on the advanced side. And that's going to be $800 because we are flying out there. And this is going to be our first time in a couple years going there. So we hope to have a lot of fun.
So that's kind of an overview of our club and what we do. Thank you so much for listening, and if there's any questions, we're happy to answer them. Those are also the emails of our 2 advisors of our club. If you have further questions, they're great people to reach out to. They are pretty much experts in everything about our club, but we're happy to answer any questions right now that anyone has, if there are any.
Could you guys introduce yourselves?
Oh, so sorry. I'm Marcella, like I said.
Your role is in Model UN.
I'm Marcella. I'm the president this year.
I'm Lily. I'm the member-to-member relations officer.
I'm Miriam. I'm this year's secretary.
I'm Trinity. I'm the vice president.
And I'm Mason, I'm also a member-to-member relations officer.
How do you raise money to support travel to these conferences?
So the things that we do every year, we have opportunities for our delegates in our club to sell Bucky books to fundraise. So I believe that they get, I'm not actually sure the exact amount of money that they get, but typically people have raised like up to $100 for their own personal conferences. That's just for individual fees. And as a club, we run the concessions at games at our school, and our school has a really great program where the clubs that run concessions can earn money from them, a certain percentage. So that helps fund individuals. And we're also this year, we're trying to emphasize fundraising a lot more because we're bringing back some of these more expensive conferences. So we're writing letters to local businesses for help. We're going to be trying to create t-shirts to sell for fundraisers. And it's a lot of activities like that. But a lot of it is in-school fundraising.
And if I can add to that, one other thing is, I believe it started last year or 2 years ago, is the actual school board started a lot like giving us a small budget, right? And so that has helped, but it's, as we grow and as we continue to grow, it starts to get more and more costly for overall costs of the club.
Do you have social media pages specifically for Model UN that you can share?
Yes, we do. We have an Instagram page, ng.modelun. We post all of our updates on there, and anything else that you want to know, you can just check out that page. And if you have any questions and you want to ask our advisors, you can also DM us on that Instagram page.
And were the pricing that you had on there with per person or per group?
So let me pull that slide back up okay. It's not going back up, but it is per person. It's not for the full group. So each individual price is like for the Washington, D.C. conference, it is $800 per person. That can vary if we manage to get more fundraising or for the individual if they fundraise, but that is like the upfront cost for each delegate that attends.
I think you guys did 25 going.
Yes, for Washington, D.C., we're expecting to take 25 experienced delegates. But for Chicago International, we take, I believe, around 40 people, which it's a bigger group. We take some of our more beginner members to get them experience.
I was just curious, how could I specifically help you? How could anyone in this room specifically help you raise the money that you need? Am I hearing that you need to buy a Bucky book, or is there some other way that we can?
So we're open to a lot of different types of support. Because these are expensive conferences and we're looking to get more just overall funding for everyone, we appreciate any sort of donations for our club, no matter how small or large. It's just these fees add up, and so we're really looking to bring those costs down. And our Bucky Book fundraiser has concluded at this point, but at the end, in like September and October, there are delegates who will go around their neighborhood selling Bucky Books, which is also a great way to support if anyone ever pitches that idea to you. But yeah, really the main way that we would appreciate help from our community members is any sort of donations for the club or just, more awareness for our club and what we do as a team. That would be really helpful.
Could you make it really easy for me to donate? Like, tell me who to call. How do I do it? How do I just?
She wants to send you a check.
Like, with me today, right? Okay.
Yeah, so
Check.
a check would be a great way to, yes, I believe, I'm not exactly sure who to make the check out to. I would assume it would just be Monona Grove Model United Nations. Or if you're ever confused, reaching out to Jeremy Wallace or Brian Jefferson, they'd be happy to answer any questions about that as well.
You can also just write it to Monona Grove High School and the money will go where it needs to go.
Yes.
Well, and Katie, and Dan's here, when we write a check to the high school, is that considered a tax deductible expense?
It is.
So you can write it off?
Or it may be. I don't want to be, but, yeah, we are the same status as a, the nonprofit.
And I think in exchange for donations, you guys talked about maybe coming to speak to their businesses as well about your experience and at these conferences. And like last year in Chicago, do you guys want to talk about anything great that happened in Chicago?
I mean, I'll start here. It was my first time doing an advanced committee, so you can do the very basic, like, hey, I'm Algeria and I'm in the World Health Organization. But then as you progress, you get more and more complex ideas, and you move to, for me, I was an executive in the ExxonMobil committee. So I was handling financial issues and like help managing a company, right? And so those more unique experiences stretch out across a long day where multiple things can develop and they can throw at you more complex ideas. These more advanced committees like Simon, right, these more advanced conferences, they really allow you to get something that like isn't present in locally run by kids one-day conferences. And so like Simon for me was the highlight of my Model UN career so far. It's a really unique experience for me.
At that conference, we did win what's called an outstanding delegation. So when you go to conferences, the photos up here, you can see you can win individual awards for your committee, but you can also win overall delegation awards, and that just means the delegates that the school sends. So we won outstanding delegation, which is technically second place. We were second to a very, very, very like highly respected. It was a very rich school. So maybe that's a problem. Maybe we need more funding. Maybe we need first place. But all of our delegates worked very, very hard, and we're very, very proud of that achievement. That was the biggest award that our club has ever won, and we won it last year. So
Would you say there were dozens of schools there or hundreds of schools?
hundreds.
So that's really great that you guys were able to bring that home last year.
For me, going to Simon was an amazing experience. Like Mason said, I was also in an advanced committee like that. But more than that, just in general, our Model UN team, like Kimberly said, is very, very advanced. Last year, at our local conference, MADMA, we won more than 50% of the awards because of how good our delegates are. And any sort of help would really just help push our delegates to go to more conferences like Simon to see, and anything would help. For me, at Simon, I was not in an advanced committee. I was in the beginners committee. It was my second ever conference, and because there was just so many people there, I think our committee had like 80 people. I was able to just learn a ton of skills from them that really helped me to become where I am now.
And I will say these experiences are across the board. Our officers are typically our more advanced members, but we hear back from our freshmen that they've had amazing experiences going to these conferences. Even if they don't win awards, they've just learned a lot and they've gained a lot of skills that they will bring with them for the rest of their lives. And they've really appreciated these experiences from what we've heard from them. Great. Yeah, thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you so much, team. I'm sure if anyone has paid attention in the last, 5 decades, diplomacy skills are in short supply. So best of luck and congratulations on making the team. Next, we have the City Commission for Sustainability. Teresa, are you the one? Okay. They're just going to give you a quick update.
My daughter was part of Model UN, Catherine Roberts. Yeah, I love that. It was an incredible experience. I mean, your ability to just speak extemporaneously to hundreds of people comfortably about issues that affect global politics, social justice. It's amazing. Big respect to you guys. I will try not to be too anticlimactic with my presentation after that one. I'm Teresa Rademacher, and oh, do you want me to? Yeah, sure. Just because it's on the video. I'm happy to do that.
So I'm Teresa Rademacher, and I'm a freshman city council person. I'll be finishing up my first term this coming spring of next year. And with any city council person, the mayor appoints you to some committees. And the committee appointments that I'm currently serving are with the committee of the Tourism Commission in Monona. It starts with a T, very different situation. So tourism, community media, where I've had a really great chance to meet the folks that are making all this stuff happen today. I also am involved in the city's DEIB implementation team, meaning that we're implementing that plan that was put together by the original DEIB team. And landmarks is another one of my committee assignments. And then today I'm going to talk to you a bit about my last assignment, which is the sustainability committee. But before I do, I guess my point is that if you have any questions about any of those areas or issues facing Monona, I am the alder that you are absolutely free to reach out to. If you reach out to me about a different matter, something about parks or public works, the committees I'm not assigned to, I'll just point you to the people who know much more about that than I do. Okay, so with sustainability, one of the things that we do is we try to educate the community just about the little things that they can do every day, that we all do our part. Small actions multiplied by many, many get big outcomes. And so we have these seasonal campaigns. In the summer, we do some work about electronics recycling. In the summer, we also do some educational outreach about how we can take care of our lawns to promote more pollinators. No May has, wow, it's really taken off. But now we're sort of trying to get a little bit beyond that and talk about, how to create habitat for the bees and other things that go a little bit beyond just not mowing your lawn for a few months. In the winter, we talk about how we can reduce the amount of salt that we put on our sidewalks and driveways to protect our waterways. So the statistic is I'm blanking on the statistic, but it's like this tiny little bit of salt can pollute up to many gallons of water and make it inhabitable for lake and water life. In the autumn, now, we are reaching out and trying to educate people about how the way that we rake leaves can also have an impact on our waterways. So when leaves are on our property, they provide a lot of nutrition to the soil. Fabulous nutrition. You don't have to pay for fertilizer. Just crunch up your leaves and let them do the work. But when leaves fall in the street, and they stay in the street, that impervious pavement, water comes down, the rainwater falls, hits those leaves, takes the phosphorus from the leaves, turns the rainwater kind of brown. The water flows down into your storm drain, your watershed, that wherever you're in, we're all sort of in a watershed where the water just eventually falls into a storm drain. Years ago, I used to think to myself, it's stuff that goes down the storm drain. There's probably just like a little intermediary place where it's cleaned up before it goes into the lake, but not really. It just goes straight into the lake. So when leaves and the phosphorus that is leached from the leaves by that rainwater, when that gets into the lake, it produces algae. And algae is also really detrimental to anything that lives in the water, the people that enjoy the water, the dogs that swim in the water. So in a nutshell, in the autumn, We're just trying to remind people to keep the leaves on your property where they benefit your soil. And if you see them falling in the streets, rake them out of the streets and bring them back into your property. If you live in Monona, we have these fabulous vacuum trucks that go around the city. They can reach up to 10 feet into your property, so you don't have to get the leaves very close. You can leave a little buffer of grass, so that just helps keep those leaves on your property a little bit more. And we only have 3 of them, and they move very slowly, so we just need to be patient and wait for them to come around. And sometimes people put other stuff in their pile of leaves, like pumpkins or big sticks. And then when those things get sucked up in the vacuum truck, you can imagine it causes some damage, very expensively, costly damage. Then we might be down to only 2 trucks. Then it even takes even longer for them to do the work they need to do. So if everybody does their part, we'll get by. Businesses can help the Sustainability Committee spread the word. So that's my ask of you today. We often put together informational flyers. Whenever we can, we get them from the county. The county is doing wonderful work already. Why reinvent the wheel? This is an informational flyer about leaf-free streets for clean waters. If you have a business that is just sort of set up in a manner that it would make sense or it'd be easy for you to have a little stack at a front counter for people to look at when they're waiting or take with them, I would love to drop those off at your place of business. The same goes for any time of the year, winter, spring, whatever it is that we're up to. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for coming and sharing with that. Let me just get this back up. So, Neil, would you like to talk as well, or are you just here to listen? Okay. So next, could we have Mayor O'Connor, Superintendent Olson, Sarah Smith is here from the Dane County, our Dane County Supervisor, and then Bill Connors is also here from Smart Growth of Greater Madison. So we're just gonna roll this table around. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, and Doug. So once we get everyone settled up here, just a reminder, I do have a microphone, so if you'd like to ask any questions, just kind of raise your hand and I'll run, grab this, give this to you, because it is being live streamed as well. So, panel, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day to come give us updates. So I guess we will start with Mayor Mary O'Connor.
Update on what's happening in the city, and then Doug, our planner, is going to talk about more the economic development side of things here. I guess maybe we should move this over here a little bit. I just have a couple of things that I know people are always asking about. First of all, San Damiano, what's happening with the property there. I think most of you probably know we bought this spectacular property a couple of years ago. It's 10 acres, it's 1,500 feet of shoreline on Lake Monona, and it's really the last undeveloped piece of Lake Monona. And we are in the process, the city bought it. We got a $2 million grant from the county to help us towards the purchase. Thank you to our county board rep, Sarah Smith here. And so what we're doing now is we have a master planning committee there's 10 members representing a variety of local groups, and Monona residents, the Friends of San Damiano. We are working on a master plan for the property, and that's been going on for close to a year and a half now. We're hoping to have a final report on that, which will go to the city council within the next couple of months. The committees, we've had a couple of public input meetings. We've done a big survey. People can come to our meetings, so we've gathered a lot of input from residents. And the committee we've made a lot of decisions about most of the features on the property in the conceptual plan, things like parking and walking paths and nature-based play space and an accessible boat or pier. The vast majority of people tell me, we don't want you to do a lot with it. We love it the way it is, and we don't want it overly developed, so we're not going to be putting baseball diamonds or anything like that up there. We are still, continuing to evaluate what to do with the house. We know we need some kind of a 4-year or 4-season facility for events, and we like to provide a place for schools to bring kids for classes and all kinds of things like that. And we are just still debating about the choices, kind of renovating the existing house or building a new facility. And a lot of that is going to come down to money and the condition of the house and what's involved in renovating it. So at this point, we anticipate that a final public information meeting is going to take place sometime in January. And after that, then the recommended plan will go to the city council for their consideration. So I guess I'll just go through everything, and then if people have some questions at the end. The other big project, I guess, that's going on is this public safety building, civic building project, which Monona has known that we need to do something about our city facilities, and specifically the public safety facilities to start with, for a long time. And the city did a study back in 2011 that made recommendations that was kind of put on the shelf. When I became mayor in 2017, I appointed a committee to update that study. And so we've been and then of course COVID hit, and it's just been something else. But we know that we need to replace our public safety facilities to start with. We also need to do something about the community center and the pool at some point, but they're kind of waiting in the wings. So right now, we have decided that we want to build new facilities on the back of City Hall, right over here in that parking lot. It would involve most likely taking down the current garage where the fire trucks are, which actually was built to be the Public Works garage about 60 years ago, so it is in no way functional for fire trucks, really. Some of the doors have about this much space to, I don't know how they back these trucks in and out, but anyway, so we are at the point, we had a committee to study that. They made a recommendation. Council decided to go ahead with hiring an architect. We did a study, just a feasibility study last year that determined, yes, we could build something there, it would fit. And now we are in the process of hiring an architectural firm to help with architectural and design services. I did appoint an ad hoc building committee, and they recommended that we hire Bray Architects. So we're in the final process of agreeing on a contract with them, which that will be coming to City Council within the next meeting. I think it's at our meeting next Monday, actually. I think this should go to referendum. This council would not have to go to referendum over this, unlike with school projects. The council could just decide to go ahead and build it, but we're talking a lot of money, probably between $30 and $40 million, and just in part because building costs have gone up so much, but it's not going to get any cheaper. And meanwhile, right now, we're having to replace a restroom in the basement of where the fire department is. That's costing us over $100,000 because it's so old, it's just falling apart. You don't want to know what's coming up through our floor drains. So we can't just keep on putting Band-Aids on these things. So anyway, we've hired Bray. Their design will occur in 2 phases, and the first is going to be verifying our space needs, coming up with the initial site and floor plans, and some renderings so we can show people what this is going to look like. We're planning to go to referendum next November about this, actually. Assuming that the referendum's approved, then Bray will proceed to the final design process. And so that's where the bulk of their work will be. And once we have the final design, then they'll begin building, I think, probably we're talking 2026 for construction at this point. A couple other things, city budgets. The council will vote on my proposed capital budget this coming Monday. We anticipate borrowing about $3 million for capital projects in '24. We've really tried to keep it at about $3 million over the past several years, in part because we knew this public safety building project was coming. Some of the highlights, we're getting a new fire engine. There's some park projects because we need to bring several areas of our parks up to meet ADA requirements. So we're going to be doing a couple projects that will help get us to that. And another big thing is we're completing conversion of all of our streetlights in residential areas to LED, which we think is going to save us about 30% in electrical costs. So, and we did get grant money for part of that. So, council's met twice over the past several days to hear presentations from city staff on my operating budget proposal. And due to the fact that Monona had no new net construction this year, and I don't have an hour to explain that whole process, but that's basically how we can increase our taxes for property taxes for operating purposes is based on a state regulations, a state law, and it's all tied in with how much net new construction we have. And it just depends from year to year if we have what projects we have starting, which Doug will be updating us on that. We have several coming in the near future, but unfortunately we didn't have one for the last year or two. So that means our budget's going to be very tight. So the council is going to consider my proposed budget for the first time this coming Monday, and then a final vote at our second meeting in November. And then just some good news, the Climate Champions Award. This is something Monona was recently recognized by the Dane County Office of Energy and Climate Change as a climate champion, and we were awarded an Emerging Star Award in the fleet operations category for our hybrid and electric vehicle upgrades within the Parks Department and Police Department, and that's helped, not only is it helping the environment, but it's helped to decrease our Police Department's annual fuel usage by about 16% and citywide by about 6%, which is great. And the other thing is, Teresa mentioned being on our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Belonging Committee, which is, they're planning to hold a community listening session at the library in this room, I think on November 30th. We appointed a committee a couple of years ago after we had a lot of racial incidents here in Monona. We had several of them. Appointed a committee to come up with some ideas for how we can make Monona a more welcoming place. And it is welcoming in a lot of respects. But so this committee has actually been working on implementing some of those suggestions that the original committee came up with, and they put in a lot of work and a lot of time on it, and they'll be presenting their suggestions to the community on November 30th. So you're all welcome to come, and I really encourage you to come because they put in a lot of work, and I think it'd be great to hear what they're thinking. And that's pretty much all my news right now, or the main points. Does anybody have any questions?
So November 30th, 7 p.m. this room.
Okay, 7, I wasn't sure. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to turn it over to Doug, who will tell us all about all the new projects coming to us.
Thank you, May. Good morning, everybody. Doug Plowman, the Planning Director with the City of Monona. Some exciting updates to share with you all since we last met. Quite a few developments that are moving forward and in different phases and sort of process along the way. So the first one you may have noticed is over on East Broadway. We're calling it kind of the North Point Whitehorse project. This is over by Menards, sort of just south of the Shell gas station there. It's a 75-unit workforce housing development that's going in. There's going to be 63 apartment units as well as 12 townhomes, and this is being led by North Point Development Corporation. They specialize in workforce housing, using federal tax credits, and so this project will sort of range in rental rates from 30% of the area median income all the way through to market rate. So really excited about this. It's going to be a great development and really going to spur, they're taking about a third of the site over there in total, so there's still going to be about 2/3 remaining. And there is going to be a new access drive being put in as well, so there's going to be some commercial sites that are available off of there that will sort of help fill in that space as well. So really great beltline visibility, access, but also just access and sort of walkability to the parks, to the services that we have over there as well. So that broke ground, I think, about 4 or 5 weeks ago at this point, and we're expecting a formal groundbreaking pretty soon here as well. But they were eager to get going before the weather turned. So that's underway. Another one that you may have noticed is the MESBA project, which is at the former Monona Garden site just on Bridge Road. You may have seen there's some construction fencing up around that building now. We're expecting that to be taken down any day. This project was actually approved in the middle of 2022. Really interesting development that kind of has a few elements to it. So there's going to be 29 traditional apartment units, 16 live-work units. So there's going to be sort of a ground floor commercial space with attached residential above. So the developer kind of pitched this as small office space, small commercial space. Maybe it's going to be your tax advisor, maybe it's sort of a small creative space or something like that. So really neat product that we don't have anywhere else in the city. And then there's going to be 3,200 square feet of traditional commercial space as well. So a really diverse project there that's building just across the street from the riverfront, from the current that's there already, and also helping One City Schools is right there as well. So just really a lot of energy, a lot of excitement for that project that we expect demolition in the next couple of weeks, and they'll be working on that throughout the winter and into 2024. And then finally, sort of in the still in the entitlement process, is the Bloom project, which is on Monona Drive. This is the block sort of bound by West Dean and Springhaven, and this is what mainly most people know it as kind of the BMO drive-through area, that site. So the developer there is proposing to purchase and assemble the lots, the entirety of that block. The proposal as put forward is for 98 apartment units, mainly along Monona Drive, with ground floor commercial space. So there will be a BMO Harris Bank kind of anchoring the southern corner of that, closest to Dean Avenue, with drive-through lanes. But there'll also be a cafe as well as a business incubator space as well going in. And so that was approved at Plan Commission in late October, and that'll be moving through for City Council review here in the next 2 meetings in November. All being well, we expect the demo for that to take place by the end of the year, again with construction into 2024, but that's all still pending City Council review. Moving away from some of the residential projects, we've got a couple commercial developments as well that I just wanted to share with you briefly. The first one you may have noticed at the former Rutabaga site on West Broadway. That is the Madison Pediatric Dental Office. They're moving just down the street from River Place, building their own space there. It's going to be a really great building, some neat architecture that's going on there as well, and I know sort of a real institution for the community. Lots of folks, taking their kids there in the past, and really glad to see them staying here, investing in the community, and re-energizing that site after we lost Rutabaga there. So it's going to be, they're making some good progress, and we expect that'll be fully operational in 2024. Another bigger commercial update as well is Pet Supplies Plus is going to be moving in to the space adjacent to Floor and Decor, and that's going to be over at Southtown Mall. So this is actually going to be their biggest regional store, and there's going to be a lot of training facilities in there for the grooming and for staff and things like that. So they've got a couple in the area, most notably over in Fitchburg. So they're going to be moving in. It's just over 12,500 square feet. So they just pulled building permits for that, and they'll be starting that build out soon. And that's in addition to the Michaels and Five Below that's also going in over there in the former Hobby Lobby space. So lots of excitement over there, and you'll really see a lot more. There'll be a lot more retail opportunities over at Southtown very soon as well. A couple other updates that I just wanted to give, sort of from economic development perspective, and from the city's CDA. We're expecting some discussion, continued discussion on the project over by the Food Fights building over on 5105 Monona Drive. That's the vacant parcel that's right there. There's a proposal currently for an apartment building that has been moving through Plan Commission. They are sort of at CDA for TIF discussion at this point, so we're expecting that to come through late November to sort of see if there's any opportunity for TIF financing there. That would be traditional rental units with sort of a small sort of commercial component on the ground floor. Additionally, the CDA is also looking at the Renew Monona loan program. This is a really great program that assists with redevelopment of sort of single-family, older, aging housing stock. It's a 2% loan, so in this current market is very attractive. It can be used for anything from window, energy efficiency upgrades, solar panels, all the way through to larger redevelopment. So, additions and things like that. So they're looking into that program, making some tweaks, and certainly working with some of the goals, some of the diversity goals that the city has, just to adjust some of those things there. But just wanted to bring that up. It's a program that when people know about it, they're really excited about it and really share the word. But just wanted to bring that up so you all can be aware of it. It's based on assessed values, so there's no income requirements or anything like that. But if the property is assessed and is eligible, then it's a matching loan, so it's sort of up to 50% of the project cost. But at the 2% is really the key element at this point. And finally, city staff are working on a short-term rental ordinance. This was something that came through City Council earlier this year, and it's something that we now, we're working on the software and sort of bringing that into permitting and things like that. So it's something, I think has been sort of in the narrative, and I think we've seen more examples of these across the city, and something now that we have an ordinance on the books now that we will be enforcing. The deadline for applications for that is the end of the year, and we'll be working with property owners to bring them into compliance and pull the necessary permits for that. That's everything from me.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Just because the live workspace is so unique, and I'm kind of a newbie at understanding all of this, is the anticipation that the people that have a retail space there are going to be living there? I mean, is it a requirement, to be able to occupy that?
We're expecting, so the details are still to be finalized, whether it's a rental or a condo. The owner is still to decide quite how the operations of that would work, but they are directly connected, so I would expect it would either be an employee or the owner of the business.
Okay.
There is, from the Planning Commission, there's the expectation that the ground floor be that commercial, sort of with, welcoming, transparent, kind of that retail feel rather than closing it in and things like that. But they are connected, so it's sort of the traditional shop with the retail above, that type of model, or residential above, sorry.
Yeah, because a lot of the construction that's occurring is kind of the same premise, retail on the bottom, apartments above, but that being more live work. I was just curious. And then with the BMO construction, do you anticipate there being I know there's 2 lanes of traffic on that, or 4 lanes of traffic in that area. Do you anticipate the road being shut down at any point on that side?
Specifically Monona Drive?
Yeah.
Not at this point. There's some discussion, I will say, sort of from a utility perspective. Obviously, they're connecting to some utilities within the street. There's discussion, and there was discussion at Plan Commission last week about whether they can be abandoned off-site so that they don't need to close lanes and things like that. But it's very much a focus that we know how important that street is, and any sort of closures would be kept to a minimum. But at this point, the fencing and all those things sort of for the longer-term construction will all be on site. Okay.
And then again, with the same construction, the Monona Drive ones specifically, do you, I haven't seen the plans come through, but I know parking has kind of always been an issue in Monona. Do you anticipate that pinching the parking opportunities for those 2, like the 5105 I think you mentioned, and the BMO?
So I'll talk to the BMO, to the Bloom first. They conducted a traffic impact analysis as part of the development. So a little, not quite the parking directly, but just to understand what that would look like. With this, I would say the fact that they're taking the whole block as well helps them consolidate some of those things. So they're going to be closing all of the curb cuts on Gordon as well as on Monona Drive. So it'll really be more of a north-south flow. And then the commission, when they're reviewing the parking, did not, it was all to be on site. They're not looking at any sort of overflow on Gordon or anything like that. So that will sort of remain in its existing form, condition, both for residents, but also possibly high school students and things like that. That is all to remain public. So on site, they're just 8 stalls short of their requirements from the city, and that includes over 20 of those stalls that would be required for the BMO. So, of course, the bank use is going to be more Monday to Friday, limited weekend hours, certainly no evening hours. So there is the expectation there'll be shared parking and things like that. They're also putting in a zip car, an electric vehicle zip car that's going to be on site that residents can use, but also public can. And they've really done a lot with sort of the bike parking, both private parking, both for residents, but also for visitors as well. So I think they expect a lot of that retail will be kind of local serving, that you can arrive on foot, you can arrive, by different means. And so finally, the Springhaven section, the northern portion, is going to remain sort of in a similar condition. You've got that pull-in parking at the moment. It's being redesigned, but it's going to be a very similar form. So that will help with some of the retail that's going to be there on that corner, that cafe in particular. But also, we're not expecting that parking to be an issue. It'll operate similar, sort of with that daytime commercial traffic, but then the evening residential. So that's that project.
Doug, how many underground spots are there going to be there?
There's just under 100 of underground as well. So basically every unit will have one underground, and then there'll be additional above ground as well. So
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Thanks.
So I'm Sarah Smith. I am the County Board Supervisor for District 24, which includes Monona, but about half the district is the city of Monona. The other half of the district is in the city of Madison, so it's the Lake Edge neighborhood, Glendale neighborhood, and down south to the McFarland border. The lines were changed for the 2022 elections, so it's a little bit of a different footprint, but still includes the entirety of the city of Monona to kind of keep that a little bit cohesive for folks. So I have been on the county board since 2020, so just getting into the swing of, in-person meetings after my entire first term, never met anybody in person. So, so it feels like, still very, very new to it, but we are wrapping up the 2024 budget cycle, so that's kind of the main thing I wanted to walk through today and just kind of talk about some of the things that we are probably going to pass out of the board, but the budget has not been fully approved. So somewhat similar to the city, we have separate capital and operating budgets, but different than both the city of Madison and the city of Monona. We take them up at the same time, so it's a simultaneous sort of package that we will be deliberating on beginning on Monday next week. So we do schedule multiple days of deliberation. So far, the budget cycles that I've been part of, we finish it that first night. So we'll see how long debate carries on. Nothing good happens after midnight, so we kind of cut it off at a certain point if we need to, and pick it up the next day. But I think we're optimistic. There's been a lot of really good work on the budget over the last, certainly at least the last month or so, but certain budget conversations begin long before that for people that are reaching out to supervisors and reaching out to the county executive to get things into the budget. So it's a long process, but the last month in particular has just been a flurry of budget meetings. So that's the kind of main item for today. So at the beginning of the budget cycle, I was appointed to temporarily serve on the Personnel and Finance Committee, and that is essentially our budget committee for the county board. Every budget cycle, the county board chair has the option of adding a couple of supervisors to it because the job is so big, just to give a couple of more perspectives and ask more questions and things during the meeting. I've been appointed temporarily to do this a couple of times. So I was glad to do it again this year. It's always a daunting but fun time to take on like 12 extra meetings and participate in all those conversations. But it's a really good opportunity for us to really dig into every single amendment that supervisors author. So we really do consider them one by one and talk about them with all of the subject matter experts to really put together a good proposal of package amendments to adjust the county executive's proposed budget. So the county executive proposed his overall budget on October 1st, and then traditionally and this year he gives a little bit of room within our levy limit. So sort of as was talked about earlier, there's
The state legislature has a lot of parameters around what local governments are allowed to do, and so we have, you know, kind of ceilings for how much we are able to have as a tax levy. So he gave the county board then a little bit of room for us to put in additional amendments that would still be within the tax levy that was appropriate. And of course, with all of the amendments, we still were over that amount, so we still have to have a lot of difficult conversations at the Personnel and Finance Committee to try to either shorten, you know, some of them include like reducing the overall time in the next calendar year that we'll have someone in a staffed position, for example. So if you just move the start date from January 1 to March 1, that can save you a little bit of money, and you do that on 20 amendments that have staffing, you know, that can really add up. And obviously, you wouldn't immediately be able to get someone started on January 1st, so it typically works out just fine for the operational needs of that area. So that's one of the things we kind of do strategically, try to identify those opportunities. But also just, you know, being able to take a step back and look across all the amendments. And, you know, obviously every issue is very important that comes to the county board, but you have to make kind of those decisions where, you know, making sure the money is kind of spread around to all the different areas that really need funding. So some of the things that we have included in the package of amendments, so I do have a full list here, but I won't read you all of them because it's too many, but we had 49 operating amendments and 16 capital amendments that we ultimately approved out of the Personnel and Finance Committee on Monday night. So that just happened. And the final opportunity for people to give public comment to the full county board about those proposed amendments is on Thursday night, tomorrow night. So one of those amendments that was included was one that I authored to support a nonprofit that's in our district, Solace Friends, which might be a group that some of you are not familiar with. It's new, they're starting to get off the ground. So Solace Friends is a group that will be offering hospice care primarily to unhoused individuals. So as far as we are aware, they would be the first compassionate hospice care for unhoused individuals in the state of Wisconsin that we're aware of. So certainly the first in Dane County. So right now, if there's a person with a terminal illness, our homeless shelters are not equipped to care for that person. And often in hospital settings and long-term care settings, people with more complex social support needs, like unhoused individuals or people with substance use disorders, aren't allowed to remain in some of those facilities long-term, or if they don't have the financial means. So there are situations in Dane County right now, and have been for a long time, where people are being discharged from healthcare to die on the streets. And so Solace Friends is intended to be a place for people to spend as much time as they can with a group of compassionate volunteers, and then also with healthcare professionals to provide, you know, any healthcare that they need. And it is right across the street from San Damiano, which I thought was very nice when they first talked to me about purchasing that property, because they specifically said, we think it'll be lovely to be able to take some of our residents across the street to enjoy that peaceful space. So it's just a really, really important program, and County Executive Parisi included $50,000 in his base budget to support them, but their finance needs were $100,000, and that was their original request. So I authored an amendment to give them the other $50,000 to bring them up to the $100,000 that they expect, because it's going to be their first year. They need that to be able to get off the ground and start serving people right away. And thankfully, all of my colleagues on the Personnel and Finance Committee agreed that that was very important work that they would be doing, and that budget is included in its full amount, in the full $50,000, in what Personnel and Finance recommended. Of the other amendments, we have amendments to create a pandemic food system study. So the Dane County Food Council in 2022 recommended that we sort of take a step back and create a holistic, proactive approach to food insecurity, so that we, you know, can evaluate food system production as well as food needs, and kind of take a broader analysis of that, so that we can create some systems change there, so that food insecurity, which is of course a serious problem in Dane County, can be addressed in a long-term way and not short-term. So that's one of the pieces that there was an amendment to create that food system study.
There's also one to add public health nurse positions to eliminate the wait list for the prenatal care coordination. So that's a program in Dane County Public Health for that supports birth outcomes. So there's currently a very long wait list for that, and as you know, pregnancies have a limited term. So if there's a wait list, you know, you may not be able to actually be a part of the program by the time you are no longer pregnant. So that's one that those 2 nursing positions would be very helpful. We had a lot of public feedback about how important those programs are to people. Another one is to increase public health funding for the violence prevention unit, which is specifically focused on tenants. I know that many of you are probably aware of recent tragedies related to apartment buildings around Madison, but you know, certainly around Dane County there are issues of violence. So this would be just further investing in the existing violence prevention unit with public health to target particularly tenants in creating safe and stable housing for them. And then one of the other things I wanted to highlight in particular for our area is some recent moves on the Alliant Energy Center. So discussions of kind of reinvigorating the Alliant Energy Center began right before the pandemic, and then for obvious reasons were not a priority for a couple of years as we were focused on public health needs and all those other issues. But the Alliant Energy Center Steering Committee has recently started meeting again. And is kind of working on a broader strategy related to that. So there were a couple of amendments that were also put in place for the 2024 budget related to stormwater management, for flooding prevention and water quality management around Alliant Energy Center, providing more opportunities for pedestrian and bike access to and from and through Alliant Energy Center's campus, and then also beautifying the parking that exists there. So. Overall, they were relatively small in the grand scheme of a budget, but they all sort of were part of an overall package and initiative to take those first steps toward improving the Alliant Energy Center campus. Yeah, so there's a lot more in there, but I won't keep listing them all off. I'm really excited about a lot of the things that we were able to pass out of personnel and finance for our budget this year. So that's kind of where we are in the budget. So like I said, we have one final public hearing on it tomorrow night, and then we'll begin deliberations on Monday. And then one other thing I wanted to just mention, you may all have seen the news reports on it, but we also will be considering tomorrow night at the county board meeting the purchase of the former Ale Asylum building to serve as our secure election center for Dane County. That was also something that came out of a committee that was tasked with evaluating the election security and integrity of Dane County. We are a big target for individuals looking to disrupt elections, but there are also just environmental concerns. You know, you want to make sure that the building is resilient to natural disasters and those sorts of things, so that ballots and equipment are protected from any potential hazards. So that's a facility that after an analysis looked like it would meet those needs, so we don't have to start from scratch to do new construction, which is of course more affordable for us to be able to do. And obviously there will need to be renovations. We can't continue to brew beer there, unfortunately, but you know, even with those renovations, will be a more affordable project to be able to use an existing building, and it's in a great location near the airport and near bus lines and all those things. So that's also something that we passed at Personnel and Finance Committee and will be considering tomorrow night at the county board meeting. So, any questions?
Any questions for Sarah?
Any thoughts on how the building will be used the rest of the year when it's not being used for voting season?
Oh, so it'll be used in general for all clerk-related activities, so like marriage licenses and things like that. And actually, there was it's not that recent anymore, but there was a state law change that allows you to get a marriage license in any county, not just the one you live in. And so Dane County has become a bit of a hub for people to get marriage licenses. And so just like those sort of ongoing clerk, you know, activities will also happen there. And then it will also house the Madison clerk. And so, you know, the things that like the Monona clerk does, which is certainly happens year round as well, will be things that like the Madison clerk will be able to use a portion of the space at that building for those needs as well.
I have a quick question. Will they be storing all of the voting machines there?
I believe that's
For
the
the county,
intention,
which
yes. So that they're not
is a
in,
lot.
yeah, little town halls and those sorts of things where it's not always, yeah. And that has come up in the past when there have been attempted seizures of voting equipment, which, you know, some have been active search warrants, some have been just citizens attempting to seize the voting equipment. And when it's just, you know, in the closet of a town hall somewhere, it's a little bit harder to protect the integrity of that equipment than if it was in a centralized, secure facility that had expectations for access and be able to control that, so.
Any other questions? Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, let me start by, talking about our students who were here earlier. I mean, weren't they amazing? And I'm always, I shouldn't be surprised anymore, but I am. I mean, our students continue to amaze me on what they, the activities that they do. They represented themselves so well. And so when I look at programs like, what they're doing, and that is such an integral part of our overall educational process. Of course, our core academics are, what we focus on most, but all the other things and those students' experiences are so important as well. And so, you heard them talk a little bit about, budget and what the costs are to fund the programs, and that kind of leads into a little bit where we're at with our overall budget. And as it was mentioned, that they do have a budget that is supported by our school funds. It's not enough to cover the entire program, but it's something we're working really hard on to make sure that we're equitable on how we support those student organizations. We look at, what we spend on athletics and other things. The non-athletic programs, of course, are just as important. And so our activities director is really working hard and trying to look at budgets being equitable, that provide those opportunities for all students. And it was mentioned, years ago, we didn't have any budget. They had to rely entirely on fundraising. And you might recall that back in 2016 was the first time that we did an operational referendum. And that was one of the goals, to help have the resources that we can support, programs like that. And it continues, to be a focus in trying to do that, reduce student fees and reduce that reliance, on fundraising. But the reality is we're still in the revenue limits, and so there's still limited funds. And it's just a matter of, how are those distributed, equitably. So looking at our current budget, our board just adopted our 23-24 budget last week, right? And our fiscal year starts July 1st, and you might wonder, well, why are we adopting a budget 4 months into the fiscal year? And with school finance, the reason is that we do not get our equalized values from the state until October 1st, and then our state aid is released on October 15th as far as the amount. And so the board cannot finalize the tax levy until they have those two, numbers. So we certainly have a preliminary budget we've been working with since July 1st with estimates. We actually had good news on both fronts with those two pieces, the equalized value and the state aid. So our state aid actually increased by about 11%. And so that, the way the revenue limits work, certainly the more aid that you get, that means less reliance on local property taxes. And so for our property taxpayers, that was certainly good news. The equalized value also rose higher than expected. Our equalized value for the district rose also a little bit over 11%. The majority of that actually was in the village of Cottage Grove. Village of Cottage Grove increased by about 17%. And so what that means is when the tax levy is sent to the municipalities, it's apportioned, to those municipalities based upon their equalized value. So a larger portion of the property tax bill will go towards the village of Cottage Grove this year than the other municipalities. But they also have had growth to help support it. So it doesn't necessarily mean that those taxpayers in that village are going to necessarily pay higher. As you know, the local assessments are how it's divided out, locally. But bottom line is, positive news for our taxpayers, also positive news for the district. We also had enrollment growth of about 150 resident students, and a lot of our aid is based upon a per student allocation. And so, that certainly is helpful with having a sustainable budget. Just as a quick reminder about the operational referendum, that will represent an increase on everyone's tax bill coming, January. That was approved last April, and the reason that we went to operational referendum was that the 2 years prior, we actually had a freeze in per pupil funding, from the state. All school districts in the state did. And the rationale that was given to us from the legislature was that, district received a sizable amount of federal funding, COVID relief funds. And so because we had these large amount of federal funds come in, there was no need for the state, revenue. Well, the problem was that those COVID funds, first of all, were meant to be supplemental, not to supplant our current budgets. And secondly, the funding formula is based a formula based on poverty in your district. So in our school district, we didn't get near the amount of funding as other districts did in the state, and it wasn't anywhere close to enough to maintain our programming, as it existed. So I really credit our school board that we worked hard. We did not cut programming. We did run a deficit for 2 years, and we went to our constituents and asked for more relief in revenue limits, and the community, as always, was supportive and increased our revenue limit by $6 million for this upcoming year. So, so with the good news that I mentioned, the taxes still, will be impacted on that, but not by as much as we predicted at the time we went to referendum. We actually had a very conservative estimate that the mill rate might increase by as much as $2.05. It actually only increased by 50 cents. So, so again, that was certainly positive news. So the other thing that we look at in our finance and our programming, open enrollment. We get a large number of applicants every year to open enroll into the district. Mostly, a lot of it is probably because of location, and most of those applicants, are from the east side of Madison. And the board works really hard, with us on making sure that by law we have to accept unless we have space. And so we look really closely at our class sizes and to try to manage that. And so right now, our overall enrollment for the district is about 3,700 students. Just over 500 of those students are open enrollment in. We also have a little bit over 100 that open enroll out, so our net's about 400. And that's something that we have scaled back and probably will continue to scale back on as far as the number of seats because we are seeing our resident growth. Most of the resident growth is in the Cottage Grove area, but even with the city of Monona, of course, with being landlocked and not necessarily new development, we are still seeing very steady enrollment, and there is a fair number of the families that move into the city with school-aged children, and so that's certainly again a positive thing for our funding, and having that consistency is really helpful in our planning. So one of the things that our school board currently is tackling is our open enrollment policy. They'll be discussing it at their next meeting, and school districts do have a choice in their policy whether or not to provide a preference for siblings who might apply, if they have siblings currently attending, or boards have a choice of actually guaranteeing a seat for siblings. Our current policy does guarantee seats. I think the rationale is very well intended, right? You want to keep families together. It's kind of the right thing to do. But that does create some challenges then that, when there's that guarantee that there may or may not be, space or supports in place, for support services. So we're going to re-examine not whether we should continue that guarantee, be a really good discussion with the board, and we'll make it work whatever the board decides. If we continue to do that, we'll just make sure that we have the resources there to support those students. And if we move back, to a preference, that might give us a little bit more flexibility. But that'll be a really important decision the board makes, and like I said, we'll make it work either way, however we decide on that. Lastly, I'd like talking about another really positive thing that's happening in our district, our school nutrition program. Maggie Santa is the director, and she has just done a fabulous job. One of the things that she's instituted is a farm-to-table program. Wrote a grant for that, and we have a full-time person that helps coordinate that through the grant fund. And she'll be giving a report to our school board as well at our next meeting and with some of the programming. But the school nutrition programs are all federal programs as far as the funding. And it just so happens that a USDA rep is visiting Wisconsin later this month. And with our, state, through DPI, requested to visit a school, and DPI immediately turned to us as a kind of a model program that we're going to have a visit with. So again, kind of a feather in the cap of the people that work in that program. Again, May gets a lot of credit, our entire staff, of what they put together.
Okay, any questions?
Just probably not questions that I have, but I thought it just might add clarity. Do you want to add about the award that was just given to Taylor Prairie, National Award?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So Taylor Prairie School in Cottage Grove, primary school, was recently awarded a Healthy Schools Award through a national organization, and our teachers actually wrote the application, and they were recently recognized in Washington, D.C. for that award. So yeah, absolutely something we're really proud of as well.
Well, and the healthy, do you want to add just a second on what a healthy school is?
Sure. So
we're
it's
not just talking about nutrition.
It's not just about nutrition, absolutely. It's about educating the whole child and supports that we have in place for our children. We talk about things like social emotional learning and how we support our students, that way as well. So it's really the overall wellness, of the school and supporting students.
Well, and you may know the principal that's out there, Emily Foster. She was the assistant principal at Winnequa School and is now the principal at Taylor Prairie. And then, Dan, the other thing was about the budget. Basically, do you want to tell them the amount of the federal funding that we've lost through the
Sure.
COVID?
Yeah, absolutely. So our overall budget's about $55 million, and the deficit that we were running because of the freezing state funding was about $6 million. And so that's what our operational referendum was for this past year, is to increase by $6 million. We actually only received about $3 million in federal funding, so it was not enough to fill that gap. And that was one-time funds, and those were all expended in our last year's budget, and then going into this year, those are done.
So if you look at our budget, one of the things that you'll see is that $3 million difference because those funds are gone.
Right.
And then do you want to just make a 2-minute the difficulty in the state funding that we're having right now due to basically the inability to pass some of that funding in the legislature? And then I mean, like the per student amount.
Yeah. So, so in the last 2-year budget that was just adopted by the state legislature, they actually approved a $325 per pupil increase for all school districts, and that sounds really good. It's certainly a lot better than zero that we had 2 years prior. The reality is $325 is not even enough to keep up with inflation. So thankfully we've had the operational referendum on top of that. So our budget, we're in a lot better shape than many school districts. Most school districts that are getting the $325 again are still facing tremendous budget challenges.
Well, and then Dan, just it's my impression that the board discussion related to open enrollment and siblings is related to not limiting siblings except in the event of needing very specialized services for that sibling that we don't have available.
Yeah.
So you hate to take a student in open enrollment and you can't provide the very specific educational services that technically are required by law.
Yeah, and that's really one of the challenges, right? It's not just about space and class size, but if we have a student who has significant, needs, as well, and not that we can't provide for those needs, but again, with, our staffing is set and with sometimes that it can create a challenge, to have to deal with that after the school year starts. And so that's really one of the biggest challenges with the guarantee is when we do have students. It's really not about money, it's really about having the staff to support, students.
Any other questions for Dan? No? Okay, and last but definitely not least, Mr. Bill Connors.
Well, hello, everybody. I don't have an update for you because this is the first time I've ever been here, but thanks very much for inviting me. I appreciate it. My name is Bill Connors. I'm the Executive Director of Smart Growth Greater Madison. So Smart Growth Greater Madison started out as Smart Growth Madison 20 years ago, and it was created by a group of local real estate developers who were concerned that the city of Madison was adopting new ordinances and new policies that were negatively impacting real estate development and the business community, the business environment in Madison without having really complete information. And so Smart Growth was created to be able to provide information, resources to local government officials making policy decisions. And that's what we continue to do today, where our name changed along the way, and we're now Smart Growth Greater Madison. So we're not just focused on Madison, but on Monona, Fitchburg, Sun Prairie, Middleton. Like Middleton is working on a new zoning code right now, and I'm very actively engaged with Middleton staff and policymakers about certain provisions of that new zoning code. So I'll talk a little bit more in a moment about what smart growth is, but I just want to introduce myself a little bit. My hope is that by going to local business leaders like yourselves, we can establish a relationship. You know who I am. And so if something comes up at some point in time where you have concerns and we have concerns, we can maybe work collaboratively to express those concerns to the good folks who run our local governments. And let me just say that I was for 5 years an alderperson in the city of Sun Prairie, so I greatly appreciate the challenges these people face in running local governments. It's not easy at all, and so I'm very thankful to them in my community, and I hope you are thankful to them in your community for the work that they do. And incidentally, out in Sun Prairie, I work very closely with that guy, your new city administrator, Neil Steckschulte. He was our economic development director, and when I was on the city council, I was all about economic development. So I was down checking in with Neil on a regular basis to find out what was going on in Sun Prairie. But going back, my background a little bit back further, I'm familiar with Monona because I grew up on, I went to La Follette High School. I grew up on the south side of Madison, little strip of land along the south side of Lake Monona, the Winona Way neighborhood, which is right by, like Southtown and the Walmart there, which is in Monona. Except when I grew up there was no Southtown, there was no Walmart, and in fact, the Beltline Highway was Broadway. That's how old I am. and in high school and college, I worked at the A&W Drive-In on Monona Drive, which no longer exists. But for those of you who have been in Monona for a long time, that was kind of a landmark, that A&W Drive-In. So I got ties to Monona. But going back to Smart Growth, it's an organization. We have 13. It's a membership organization, and we do lobbying. That's part of what we do, and on local government policy in general. So I don't get involved in individual development projects. It's more about what is the zoning code and how does that facilitate development and the thriving community. And so our members, we have 13 developer members who they range from multifamily developers to people who focus more on office and commercial space, to nonprofit developer members, but most of our members are actually our associate members. So they're companies like general contractors or commercial lenders like Terry from Starion Bank is one of our members, architects, engineering firms. And so if local government officials and staff have questions, want to know more about, what is the real life impact, how is this going to play out in the development community, we can bring those resources to them and share that information. Then that's what we exist to do. So I appreciate very much the opportunity to come and say hello to all of you. And I don't know if you would have any questions about my organization because you just heard about me, but in case you do, I'll be happy to answer questions.
multifamily housing is not slowing down?
It hasn't been slowing down. It has been one of the strongest areas of development, along with industrial, light manufacturing, have continued to go right along. However, we're starting to hear now that investors, the equity investors in even multifamily projects, are starting to maybe pull back a little bit because they're concerned about the headwinds created by the interest rates. And so when the Federal Reserve hikes up interest rates, there's all kinds of projects in the pipeline that it really doesn't affect, but over time it starts to slow things down. And so there is a potential that even multifamily housing might start to slow down here, but that hasn't been the case up to this point.
All right, thank you to our panel for coming this morning and giving us our updates. We have like 2 minutes. I'm going to give you a couple updates as well. Tonight, November 1st, at Husky Homes, they're doing an open house from 4 to 6, 800 West Broadway, so stop by and say hi to them. November 2nd through the 10th, any MESBA members out there, you will be getting an email with a link for a survey. Pretty quick, like 9 questions, and it's basically just asking you like what days of the week, what times of the day work best, because we want to start doing monthly member meetings instead of the breakfast and the lunch and stuff. Try to get as many people together as possible. November 7th is, we have a lunch and learn here at the library on securing your business future, some planning advice from Modern Woodman, and subs from North Shore. And November 17th, we have Parks and Rec are going to open up the skate rink for 4 to 6 for an open house there as well. And November 30th is a lunch and learn at Tully's 2 with SCORE. So if anyone is interested in all of the wonderful resources they have, please come to the lunch. Thank you all, and see you next time.